We know that now. It's Les Mattison. He is well known in business rescue circles. The question then is solidarity. Those concerns, are they founded or unfounded? Will business rescue then help the ailing airline? Gareth Cremen joins us from the law firm Lawtons Africa. Let's get straight to the point that Solidarity was raising about whether this will be an independent process. Are they looking for shadows here?
Look, the obligations of a business rescue practitioner is that, one is that they're an officer of the court. They have to be independent throughout the entire process, and they step into the shoes of the directors and management. Effectively, they take reign and control over SAA. They will then direct duties to management in certain instances, and they have the powers to remove directors and or suspend directors from their positions.
So they don't have to go to the principal shareholder for approval. Mr. Mattison, and you can tell us about him in just a moment, he has essentially carte blanche to do what he wants to pursue profitability and rescue of the business.
So the powers given to him is conferred on him per the Companies Act, and he has to stick to it. The difficulty that he will have is that if he does step out of line, which he's a prudent practitioner, I doubt as much as he would. But if he does step out of line, there are remedies available to affected persons, potentially, if he does.
Who would determine if he steps out of line? What would that mean?
It depends on the context in terms of when you say stepping out of line. If it's, a minor issue or a grouch from a creditor, that's one issue altogether. But if it's something where he is conducting himself in a particular manner that's untoward, if he's unconscionable conduct or no longer fit for office, that's a different story on its own.
So how much power and authority does he have? What I'm hearing you say is that he rules over the roost until the job that he's been given to do is deemed to be over.
Look, in terms of the timeline, there's statutory duties imposed on him, so he has to formulate a plan within the 25 days post the first meeting of creditors. In reality, it's an extremely harsh timeline. With an airline this size and a company this size, it's almost impossible to publish a plan within the time period, let alone get to grips with a preliminary investigation, bearing in mind that the first meeting of creditors has to take place from the time he's officially appointed. Per CRPC, it will probably be tomorrow. You run 10 days from then. The first meeting of creditors is then convened. That takes you well into the festive season. It's almost near to impossible that within a 10-day period he can stand there, hand on my heart, and say, I've truly investigated the company and I believe there's a reasonable prospect of rescue. And it has to be more than mere speculation.
Why can't that 25-day period be extended then?
You can apply for an extension through the general body of creditors. You need a simple majority to extend the 25 days, and in all likelihood you can extend it. The difficulty you will have with SAA, given its magnitude, is you run into reputational issues, you run into trust issues with consumers. Timing is of the essence in order to get a plan out of some sort. With an airline this size, you would have expected a pre-pack, and I don't think time was on the side of the shareholders or management to try and formulate it over here.
Gareth Cremen, what do we know then about Mr. Mattison?
Look, Les is well known within the insolvency area and within the insolvency arena. He's done a number of large rescues and has a fairly good reputation overall.
What happens if he deems the airline unfit for rescue? What happens if he can't do it? So
if he believes that there's no longer a reasonable prospect of rescue, he's mandated and he has to terminate the business rescue by liquidating. He has to apply to court and liquidate. And that's really the fundamental obligations imposed on him. But the other criteria behind it is that through the business rescue process, he must ensure that there's a better return for creditors and affected persons than in an immediate liquidation. And that's the fundamental hurdle in a rescue.
And that would be his sole remit. He wouldn't have to consult on whether to look at the potential for liquidation.
Ultimately, the decision lies with him, but he has to make that decision. He has to look at the financials, get on top of it, and if he no longer believes that there's a reasonable prospect, he should take it under advisement, and he should raise it with shareholders and affected persons at the same time, especially given the magnitude. You look at the far-reaching consequences here for 1 second into SAA, and everyone says SAA in isolation, that's fine, it's in business rescue. But you now need to look at the subsidiary and ask the question, can Mango then survive on its own? It is dependent upon SAA for traffic and for consumers, etc. So where does that leave Mango?
Just a final one then. Surely one of the recommendations that he could conceivably make would be to pare down. The challenge would be to stand up to the unions and, for that matter, to the ANC, surely.
It depends on what you're wanting to achieve for a second, because, as we know in terms of the stats and the numbers, SAA is heavily overstaffed. That's one of the issues he will have to get his head around. Bearing in mind that employees do have rights underneath business rescue, and they are given treatment probably better than what they would have underneath a liquidation scenario. So that's one of the many obstacles. And as we know with SAA, it is a monstrosity on its own. It's a highly technical area. It's not a straightforward business rescue. There's multiplicity of factors that one needs to get on top of with immediate effect.
To what extent would he be involved in the search for an equity partner?
Look, through the business rescue process, the major benefit of it is it allows you to do an expedited merger and acquisition if you want. So you can find an equity partner, you may find another international airline. And bearing in mind through business rescue, the competition authorities or the Competition Commission in South Africa has recognized degrees of urgency generally when it gets down to a merger and an acquisition. So if they partner up with another multinational, another international airline, be it Emirates or whoever, it may be worthwhile.
It's a tough job ahead, isn't it?
It's not an easy one.
Gareth Cremen, thank you very much indeed.